Hey boys and girls, whether you're building a custom guitar or, maybe you're building one from a kit, or even if you're trying to improve an existing guitar, one of the tasks you will eventually have to do is to make the nut. Making the nut can really transform your guitar. You can control the action over the first few frets, improve tuning stability, and you can even greatly improve sustain just by making your own nut if you do it correctly. And that's kind of what I've been talking about in this video on the video I posted about a week ago. And what I talked about in the last video was how I use my little flat half pencil. This is what I call a nut pencil, and I use that to mark the basic shape of the nut so that I can carve it and sand it to pretty much its rough shape prior to slotting it. And what I want to talk about today is how I mark the position of the slots for each string. So let me bring you in closer and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now the first thing I have to do is put on the outermost strings on this guitar. Now this is a 6-string standard tuned guitar. So we're talking about the high E and the low E strings. So let me put those on. I've got the high E and the low E string installed, and I have removed all the slack. It's not, really tight, but it's tight enough to where the string is straight. I can still move it from side to side. So now what I need to do is move to the end of the fretboard. I'm going to start by positioning the high E string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a ruler, and this one has graduations in 32nd of an inch as well as 64th. You can use either one. 64th is pretty hard to see, so I typically just use a 32nd of an inch. And what I'll do is I'll measure from the edge of the string to the edge of the fretboard, not the fret, the fretboard, because remember the fret itself has a beveled edge, so you won't get an accurate reading. So from the edge of the string to the edge of the fretboard, in this case, is about 1/8 of an inch, 0.125 inches. Then I'm going to come back up here to the nut, and I'm going to make that same measurement because I want it to be the same at this end of the fretboard as it is at the other. So what I have to do is I have to move the string in just a small amount, and that will get it. Now one of the problems is the string will move, it pulls itself back. So what you sometimes have to do is hold the string in that position. And then you can visually examine the length of the fretboard to make sure that the string, the distance between the edge of the string and the edge of the fretboard, is what I call equidistant, meaning it's the same distance here as it is at the end of the fretboard. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, this is a very small kerf fret saw, and this one has a kerf of 0.010 inches. And what I will do is I'm going to set it right up against the edge of the string, and then I'm just going to move it in slightly, because what I want to do is I want to put a notch, and that notch needs to be basically the center of where that string was lying, and it's just going to be a very small notch. So this is a push cut saw, so what I need to do to get it to move easily is to pull back and then slightly forward. And I'm just going to make a very shallow notch. That's about it. Now what I'll do is I'll slide the string towards that notch and you'll hear it click. I don't know if the microphone picks that up. But now it is in that notch. And then I can just go back and visually inspect to make sure that my string is the same, the edge of the string is the same distance from the edge of the fretboard from the heel all the way up to the nut. And in this case it is. If it wasn't, I could just simply redo that process and continue cutting those shallow notches until I get it into the right spot. Now, once you've done this a few times, you don't really need to use the ruler. You can do this visually. It's not that difficult to do. And that's typically what I do most of the time, is I just make sure, and I'll look at the edge of the fretboard in its relationship to the edge of the string and see how much space there is here, and I'll check that all along the fretboard. But I'll also examine the where it passes over the fret wire. Make sure that that distance remains the same all the way. And the exact amount of distance is one of those things that's it just depends on your preference. If you want the string really close to the edge, you can do that. If you want to weigh in, you can do that as well. But I think what's most important is that you try to maintain equal distance all the way along that fretboard. So here I've got pretty equal spacing, so I'm going to set my fret saw right up against that string, and then I'm going to push it over so that I'm right about where the center was. And then I'm just going to pull back and get that notch started. And this can be a little bit tricky. You can also use a nut file to do this, but it's a little bit more difficult. And I'll just cut a shallow notch. And then again, I'll slide the string over and you'll hear it click. So there. Now what I can do is I can take this is a string spacing rule. And it's set up so that you can determine the position of each of your string slots. And what you have to do is you have to orient it so that you have this side of the ruler towards the base when reading this side, and then this end towards the treble side. And each of these little notches in the ruler will indicate where you need to position your notches. So the way it works is there's 2 rows of slots here. And I usually start out with the high slot, and I'll position one right over so that this line coming off of that slot is right over the center of the string. Then I got to make sure I have 6 slots to work with. So this would be the first slot, and then this next high slot would be the second. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And as you can see, 6 is clear off the fretboard. What I need to do is have that 6th one lining up with that high E string. So I'm right now too far apart. So I'll just come down here, and I can use either the high or the low. They gradually get closer together, and they position the slots this way just so that the ruler doesn't get too weak. But then again, I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Still not there yet. So I'll continue to move in. Again, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're getting closer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Almost there, but not quite. Now this one appears to be, no, this one's dead on. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the 6th one is lined up right on that string. So now I know that's where I need to position. So what I'll do is I'll grab a pencil, make sure everything is lined up, and then I will make a mark. Now since this is the low slot, I have to use all the low slots to make my marks, and I'm just going to put a little tick mark at each of those string positions. So there I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now I can take my slotting saw and I'll place it right over the center of that line. And I'll just gradually move it back and forth, cutting a very shallow notch. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the other strings on. Okay, I've got all the strings on, so I'm just going to slide them until they pop into the slots. And I can tell just by looking at it, I have perfect spacing. But what you can do is take a break, walk away for about an hour, then come back and visually inspect it with fresh eyes. And then you may see that, you know, maybe a string is too close to one of the other strings. But I'll tell you, having one of these string spacing rules really does help get it accurate. So I'm good to go here. And what I will do going forward is to start to form those slots using my nut files. And I'll talk about that in a future video. So hope this was of value to you. And if so, give me a thumbs up. You know, if you got any comments or questions, post them down below. Click the subscribe button, click the bell for notification, all that good stuff. And until the next video, take care, and I'll see you soon.